A single poorly worded text message, 8 seconds to read, and the entire day collapsed. Not the calendar day, the inner day. The man who had been functional, focused, operating at the level his life required, that man evaporated at 8:47 in the morning because someone who had no intention of causing damage sent 6 words in a particular order that landed exactly wrong. The outer world did not change. The inner world did. Completely. In under a minute. And the man spent the rest of the day in a building that looked like his life, but that he could not quite inhabit, because something someone else did had occupied the space where he normally lived. Not the day in the calendar sense. The day inside. The inner weather. One poorly worded text, from his girlfriend, his boss, his friend, it doesn't matter who. And by 9 o'clock the quality of his attention is degraded, his decisions are running on low-grade emotional static, and the remaining 14 waking hours will be colored by the reaction he had to 23 words on a screen. He will be less sharp in the meeting. He will be shorter with the people who don't deserve it. He will replay the message at intervals throughout the afternoon, constructing responses he won't send, arguments he won't make, the whole elaborate interior drama of a man who has allowed something external to take up residence in his skull and redecorate. We don't call this a problem. We call this being human. We normalize it so thoroughly that the man who doesn't do it, the man who receives bad news, absorbs it without leakage and continues operating at full capacity, gets described as cold, robotic, emotionally unavailable. Something wrong with him that he isn't more disrupted. Marcus Aurelius would find this diagnosis almost comically backwards. The man who is undisrupted is not deficient. He is the only man in the room who is actually free. Everyone else, every person whose inner state is a hostage to the behavior of other people, the weather, the tone of a message, the specific way a colleague said something at lunch, is living in a kind of continuous psychological captivity, so normalized that it no longer looks like captivity. It just looks like life. It is not life. It is the abdication of the only territory that has ever actually belonged to you. Tell me where you're watching from. Drop the city in the comments. I want to see the map of men who are finally ready to claim something that can't be taken. Marcus Aurelius was the most powerful man in the world for nearly 2 decades. Emperor of Rome at the peak of its reach. Command over 30 million people. Over legions, over the machinery of civilization's largest organized power. He faced plagues that killed millions, military campaigns that ran for years on hostile terrain, the constant proximity of political betrayal, administrative corruption, family tragedy, and the specific loneliness of a man who carries decisions that no one else on earth has the context to share. He could have been anything. The position permitted almost any excess, any indulgence, any cruelty. History is full of men in that seat who took the permission. He spent his private hours writing instructions to himself about how not to be disturbed by any of it. That's what the Meditations actually is. Not a philosophy text, not a public document. It was never meant to be read by anyone but him. A daily private practice of a man who understood something that the world around him did not, and was determined to maintain the practice of it regardless of what the empire threw at him on any given day. The practice was simple and radical. Your inner state is the only thing you have absolute jurisdiction over. Everything else, your reputation, your health, your relationships, your legacy, what people say about you after you leave the room, is in the category of things that can be taken. The interior? That is the one territory where no external force has authority unless you grant it. He called it the Inner Citadel, and the entire project of the Meditations is the daily engineering of its walls. The modern man has almost entirely outsourced his inner state to his external circumstances. This is not a moral failing. It is the product of an environment that has been precisely engineered to exploit the vulnerability. The attention economy, every platform, every notification system, every algorithmically optimized content feed, is built on a single insight. Reactive people are more profitable than stable ones. Outrage drives engagement. Anxiety drives consumption. The man whose inner state is a continuous function of external input is an ideal participant in the system. He requires constant stimulation to regulate himself. He is perpetually dissatisfied in ways that the market has products for, and his capacity for sustained, deep, undistracted attention, the kind that might allow him to see the mechanism clearly and opt out, has been systematically degraded. The reactive man is the perfect consumer. The citadel man is a problem. Marcus Aurelius identified the mechanism of reactivity in its fundamental form, long before platforms existed to exploit it at scale. He wrote about the interval between stimulus and response, the space, however brief, between the thing that happens and your reaction to it. That interval is the location of all human freedom. In that interval you have a choice. The automatic man, the reactive man, experiences no interval at all. Stimulus arrives, response fires. He is simply the conduit through which the external event passes and becomes behavior. He is not making decisions. He is being operated. The citadel practice is the practice of lengthening that interval, deliberately, consistently, until the space between what happens and what you choose to do about it becomes wide enough to contain a question. Does this deserve my reaction? Is this the quality of thing that should have governance over my interior state? What is the actual event stripped of my interpretation of it? That last question is where Stoic philosophy does its most consequential work. Marcus Aurelius drew a line that most people spend their entire lives unable to locate. The line between the event and the judgment of the event. The event is objective. It can be stated in plain terms. Rain fell. The project was delayed. The message was critical. The relationship ended. These are things that happened in the world, and they are in themselves neutral. They are data. The judgment is what your mind adds to the data. The rain fell, and your mind adds, the day is ruined. This always happens to me. Everything is against me. The project was delayed, and your mind adds, I am failing. This reflects on my character. People will see me as incompetent. The judgment is not the event. The judgment is your construction, assembled from your history, your fears, your self-concept, your interpretation of what the event means about you and your place in the world. The suffering, almost always, lives in the judgment, not in the event. This is not a comfortable claim. It feels like victim blaming in its worst possible application, like you're being told that your pain is just a perspective problem, just a frame to be adjusted. That is not what Marcus Aurelius meant, and it would be a misreading to apply it that way. He was not telling you that nothing matters or that your grief is a cognitive error, or that the authentic emotional response to genuine loss is a failure of philosophy. He was saying something more precise and more demanding. The suffering that comes from what you cannot control is optional, not always avoidable in the immediate moment. The first hit of the bad news arrives before the philosophy can intercept it, but the sustained suffering, the hours and days of replaying and reconstructing and feeding the wound, that is your construction. The event handed you the raw material. You built the cell, and what you build you can also dismantle. The practice that Marcus Aurelius describes in his private writing is not a one-time insight but a daily discipline. He returns to the same ideas repeatedly, not because he had forgotten them, but because the practice requires repetition the way physical conditioning requires repetition. You do not build a body with a single correct idea about exercise. You build it by showing up to the work every day, regardless of whether you feel like it, regardless of whether yesterday's session produced visible results. The inner citadel is built the same way, in the small moments, not in the crisis. By the time the crisis arrives, the building had better already be standing. You construct it in the ordinary Tuesday afternoon when something mildly irritating happens, and you choose deliberately not to carry it for the rest of the day. In the conversation where someone says something dismissive and you feel the familiar flare, and you let it pass through without catching it. In the morning, before anything has gone wrong yet, by taking the brief private inventory, what could happen today, and what is actually within my power to affect, and what will I do if the things outside my power show up at their worst? That last practice, what the Stoics called premeditation of adversity, is perhaps the most counterintuitive component of the system and probably the most practically powerful. The modern self-help industry tells you to visualize success, to see the positive outcome, to picture the achievement, to align your expectations with the best case. The Stoics told you the opposite. Visualize the worst case first, not to cultivate pessimism, but to defang it. The event that has been anticipated loses its power to ambush. The man who has already sat quietly with the possibility of the worst outcome and made peace with his response to it cannot be destabilized by its arrival. He has already processed the terror in controlled conditions. He is prepared. The man who has only visualized success meets every setback as a personal attack on the universe's obligation to deliver his preferred outcome. He is perpetually blindsided. His inner citadel is made of hope, and hope, however beautiful, makes catastrophically poor structural material. Let's talk about the specific enemies of the inner citadel, because naming them is the first step in fortifying against them. Other people's opinions. This is the most persistent and most underrated threat to interior stability that most men face. Not the dramatic threats, the public humiliation, the visible failure, the daily, ambient threat of knowing or imagining what others think about your choices, your appearance, your trajectory, your worth. Marcus Aurelius wrote explicitly about the tyranny of reputation, the suffering that comes from caring too much about a reputation that you cannot fully control, and that will not survive you in any meaningful form. He was a man whose every action was observed and judged by millions, and he found a way to be substantially indifferent to it, not because he was unaware of it, because he had decided on principle that the judgment of others about his character was in the category of things outside his control, and therefore outside the jurisdiction of his attention. The man who has achieved this, even partially, even approximately, is operating at a fundamentally different level of freedom. His decisions are made on the basis of his own values. His behavior in the room when no one is watching is identical to his behavior when everyone is watching. He has nothing to perform, no version of himself to manage, no gap between the public face and the private person. That consistency, the complete absence of internal theater, is where the citadel's deepest strength lives. The past, the other great enemy, the man who is continuously relitigating yesterday, last year, the thing that happened in 2019, the conversation that ended the relationship, the decision that cost him everything. This man is not living in the present. He is a ghost haunting the rooms of events that are architecturally complete and structurally unalterable. Every second spent in the past is a second removed from the only moment in which any action is available. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this with the specific impatience of a man who had too much actual work to do to afford the luxury of retrospective suffering. What is done, is done. The energy available now is the only energy that can affect anything. Spend it there. Other people's behavior. The deepest trap of all for the reactive man is the persistent attempt to control what others do, feel, or think about him. The entire mechanism of compliance-based living, the niceness, the people-pleasing, the relentless management of others' emotional states, is fundamentally an attempt to control the uncontrollable. People will feel what they feel. They will do what they do. Their behavior emerges from their own interior, from their history, from their own fears and needs and unexamined patterns, and your relationship to all of it is exactly one thing: how you respond. That is the one variable you own, completely, inviolably, regardless of what arrives. The inner citadel is not a concept for the easy days. Anyone can maintain equanimity when everything is going well. The practice is for the moment when someone cuts you off in traffic, and the choice is between the automatic flare and the deliberate return to the baseline. It's for the moment when the project collapses, and the choice is between the spiral and the assessment. It's for the moment when someone who matters to you says something that lands like an accusation, and the choice is between the immediate defensive reaction and the pause long enough to ask, what is actually true here, and what is my construction? Marcus Aurelius faced the death of children, the betrayal of allies, the grinding attrition of decades of war, the knowledge that the empire he was holding together would not hold forever. He did not write about any of this with bitterness. He wrote about it with the specific calm of a man who had decided, at a fundamental level, that his peace was not contingent on the cooperation of external events. That decision is available to you, right now, not as an achievement you earn after years of practice, though the practice deepens it, but as a choice. The choice to locate your sovereignty in the one territory that has always been yours and that no one, no event, no message at 8:47 in the morning can touch without your explicit permission. There's a common misreading of Stoic philosophy, a flattening of it into emotional suppression, that needs to be addressed directly, because if you walk away from this with the wrong model, the practice will do damage instead of good. The citadel is not a wall between you and your emotions. It is not the practice of not feeling things. The man who has suppressed his emotional life in the name of Stoic discipline has not built a citadel. He has built a pressure vessel, and pressure vessels, under sufficient load, fail catastrophically. The history of men who confused emotional suppression with emotional mastery is a history of eventually spectacular collapse, the breakdown that arrives without warning, the cruelty that emerges from nowhere, the sudden dissolution of all the control into something that frightens everyone who witnesses it. Marcus Aurelius felt grief. He wrote about it. He experienced anger, frustration, weariness, the specific exhaustion of a man who has been carrying too much for too long. The meditations are full of the texture of a man who has a complete interior life, not the smooth blankness of a man who has cauterized his emotional capacity. What he had was not the absence of emotion. It was the absence of emotional governance. The emotions moved through him without taking up permanent residence and redecorating. He felt what he felt, registered it, and continued. He did not pursue the feeling. He did not build narrative structures around it. He did not use it as fuel for the construction of elaborate theories about what the feeling meant about his life, his worth, his prospects, his relationships. He felt it and let it pass. This is the actual practice, not suppression, not performance of indifference. The genuine metabolizing of experience, allowing the full weight of what happens to arrive, acknowledging it accurately, and releasing it back into the neutral past without carrying it forward into the present that has nothing to do with it. The word discipline is relevant here, but in its original meaning, not self-punishment, not the denial of pleasure or feeling. Disciple, to learn. The disciplined man is the man who has learned how his own interior works, who has studied the mechanics of his own reactivity with honest precision, and who applies that knowledge in real time to navigate his own psychology with something approaching skill. You are the subject and the student simultaneously. The citadel is built through the observation of the interior as much as through the management of it. There are specific practices that Marcus Aurelius describes implicitly and explicitly that translate into daily operations a man can actually implement, not as a transformation project with a completion date, as ongoing maintenance of the structure. The first is what he calls the view from above. When an event arrives with emotional charge, the insult, the setback, the piece of news that threatens the stability, he recommends expanding the perspective until the event is correctly sized, not minimized, correctly sized. The conflict that feels catastrophic within the frame of today looks different from the frame of a year, different again from the frame of a decade, from the frame of your entire life. Many of the things that currently feel like existential threats are revealed as incidents, regrettable, perhaps genuinely difficult, but not structurally defining. From the frame of history, from the frame Marcus Aurelius habitually occupied, watching the parade of emperors and empires and certainties that all dissolved, nearly everything loses its claim to catastrophe. This is not dismissiveness. It is proportion. The man with accurate proportion is not indifferent to difficulty. He responds to it with exactly the energy it deserves, neither more nor less. The underpowered response and the overpowered response are both errors of proportion. The citadel man calibrates. The second practice is the daily audit, not the productivity version, not the review of tasks completed, the interior review. What disturbed my equilibrium today? What arrived and found a crack in the wall? Not to punish himself for the crack, but to locate it, understand it, and decide whether it requires structural work or whether it was simply an unusual load that is now past. The honest daily accounting of where the citadel held and where it didn't is the primary material from which the practice improves. The third is what might be called the distinction drill. For any event that produces a strong emotional response, the practice is to separate the objective fact from every layer of interpretation until the fact stands alone. Someone said something harsh. That is the fact. Every addition, they don't respect me, I'm always the one who gets treated this way, this is typical, this means something, is interpretation, construction. The work is to see the construction clearly enough that you can choose which parts of it to keep and which to set down. Most of the suffering in the average man's interior life is not caused by facts. It is caused by interpretations of facts that were assembled quickly, automatically, and without scrutiny. and then solidified into certainties that operate below the level of conscious review. The Citadel practice is the practice of scrutiny, the refusal to allow interpretations to calcify unchallenged. One final dimension that Marcus Aurelius returns to throughout the Meditations, and that most summaries of Stoic philosophy underemphasize because it complicates the neat independence narrative. The Citadel is not built for isolation, it is built for service. The entire reason Marcus Aurelius cared about his interior stability was not self-preservation in the narrow sense. It was the recognition that a man who is emotionally unstable, who is reactive, who is hostage to the shifting temperature of his circumstances, cannot serve anything beyond his own management. Every unit of energy that goes into managing reactivity is a unit that does not go into the actual work, the actual relationships, the actual legacy. The stable man is not stable for his own comfort. He is stable so that the people who depend on him can depend on him in fact, and not just in aspiration. So that his decisions are made from his values and not from his triggered state. So that the people he loves receive his actual presence and not the remainder of his attention after reactivity has taken its cut. He wanted to be able to look at the empire, at all of it, the scale and the complexity and the weight, and be equal to it. Not because he had eliminated the difficulty, because he had built something inside himself that was larger than the difficulty. That is the actual goal. Not transcendence, not detachment, capacity. The capacity to be fully present to the full weight of your life, without being crushed by it. Build the thing that can hold it. Here is what this looks like in real life. Not the philosophical model. The Tuesday morning. You wake up to 3 problems. One is financial. Something unexpected. Something with a number attached that is larger than you want to see first thing in the morning. One is relational. A message from someone important that has the particular tone of someone who is not happy with you. One is professional, a project that is off track in a way that will require uncomfortable conversations with people who are going to have feelings about it. The unreinforced man enters his day having already lost it. His attention is fragmented between the 3 problems before he has stood up. He is reactive before he has reacted. The anticipatory anxiety of all 3 fires simultaneously, and he moves through the morning in a kind of low-grade emergency state, making decisions from that state. Communicating from that state, reading everything that arrives through the filter of a man who is already under siege. The Citadel man applies the distinction drill before he opens his laptop. The financial situation is real and requires a response. The response is a set of specific actions, and those actions can be scheduled and executed. The alarm is not the response. The alarm is noise between him and the response, and he can choose to proceed without it. The relational situation requires a conversation. He cannot control how that conversation ends. He can control the quality of attention he brings to it and the honesty of what he says. The professional situation requires assessment and communication. He will do both. The outcome is partially outside his control. His standard of execution is not. He moves through all 3 with his full capacity available, because he has not spent his full capacity on the anticipatory suffering of the problems before engaging the problems themselves. This is not magic. It is not the absence of difficulty. It is a man operating at his actual capacity, rather than at the remainder of his capacity after dread has taken its portion. That is the Citadel. Not a protection from hard things, a structure that ensures the hard things get met by the full man, not the depleted one. Marcus Aurelius did not survive 2 decades of empire by being lucky. He survived by building something so structurally sound inside himself that the outside world's attempts to destabilize him had nowhere to purchase. Every morning practice, every private note, every deliberate return to the question of what is actually in my control. These were not the indulgences of a philosopher playing at leadership. They were the engineering of the only reliable foundation available. You have the same blueprints, you have always had them. The inner citadel is not built once. It is the practice of returning to it, in the moment after the message arrives, in the meeting where the provocation is deployed, in the evening after the day that tried to dismantle you. Every return is the exercise. The exercise is the architecture. Comment below. What is the specific trigger that most reliably colonizes your interior? Not to confess, to name it. The named thing is the beginning of the managed thing. Subscribe. The next video is about the man who doesn't just defend his interior. He builds an entire strategic philosophy around it. Machiavelli meets Nietzsche, the art of moving through the world on your own terms rather than the world's.